Hey, we are live. Hello, anybody who is currently watching. It'd be pretty impressed if you were, honestly, but this will be up later. So, um, we are the draft team, the two permanent members of it currently. We are the NFL specific draft site for Uffda Sports, owned by Joe Johnson. If you have kind of been around Purple PTSD, Vikings territory, you know him and you either love him or you absolutely hate him, and that's okay. He's just a polarizing figure. Um, but I am Kirby O'Connor. I've been around for about 2 years now, and I've kind of birthed this NFL draft site. I've been wanting to do this since day one, since I came in, and we didn't really have draft coverage that much on Vikings territory, and PTSD. So I've been the one doing all the all the stuff over there. I just saw who Josh picked on the Uffda mock draft that we are currently working on. That'll be up on VT, PTSD, and draft team, and I think maybe even franchise tagged by some point at the end of the week. It'll also be on the Vikings. What is Kyle's site name? It's
Vikings Gazette.
Gazette. That's right. The
Yeah.
Vikings Gazette. Kyle will have that up on there. But now I will introduce my co-host since he's no longer making his pick. This is Josh Frey, my number 2 over on the draft team. Number probably 2 on all the other sites too, other than franchise tag, because that's Dustin's thing. And as I learned today, aspiring Wolves fan site creator.
That's right. Yeah, gonna get that in the works eventually here.
Yeah, you're just a little farther down the list than draft team was.
Yeah, a little bit.
Hopefully you don't have to wait 2 years though for us to get that started.
That's always the goal. Yeah, we'll see though.
Hey, hopefully not. We're making big moves, especially this this mock draft that's happening. That's our talking point number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Exciting stuff. The top end is not that different. Like Trevor Lawrence at 1, Sewell at 2, Zach Wilson at 3, Kyle Pitts at 4, Rashawn Slater at 5. I think that's a surprise, and actually your pick as well.
Yep.
So, do you want to talk about that one at all?
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously shooting for Sewell for Cincinnati, but I figured, like, you saw what happened with Joe Burrow last year. He was running for his life for those first 10 games, and then he tore his knee apart because he just had absolutely no protection at all. And I think that with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins there already, they have some pretty good young targets. And Kyle Pitts went 4, so it wasn't really like they could improve that much at tight end, especially like for value. So I figured just go with the next best tackle there. And I think that's Slater. I mean, he offers some really good pass protection. He was great at Northwestern. And yeah, I just think Joe Burrow needs more time to throw, and that'll help a lot.
I think he absolutely does. You look at a lot of his tape last year, and when given the chance to throw and the time, he looked really good. Obviously, he looked really good at LSU too. So I think the transition was rough, mostly because of, like you said, the pass protection. I took Sewell at 2 for the Jets. I think there was some debate while we were talking about it about going Zach Wilson at 2. I'm not high on Zach Wilson as far as quarterbacks in the draft. I wrote my profile on him for Vikings territory, and I think I said he was the quarterback that I like the least of the first rounders. I will amend that now, especially seeing Mac Jones's pro day, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. I will say he is my second least favorite quarterback in the first round. But just moving down farther, 6, Jamar Chase to the Dolphins. Not that surprising.
No.
And then I took Surtain for the Lions, which didn't, again, also not that surprising. I think that defense is terrible, especially in the secondary. And I think with Goff at quarterback, they've at least got a good or a decent like bridge to find their next guy, and they could afford to wait back a little bit. But I think Surtain is the best cornerback, in the draft easily, and I think he's going to do great in the NFL. So then Dustin took Justin Fields. Mac Jones went at 9 in this. So fun.
Yeah.
You took Jalen Waddle at number 10 for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
And that would be, you kind of mentioned it here, but that would be a crazy receiver room.
I know, yeah. That's why I did it, honestly. I think Jalen Waddle, he's my favorite receiver in this draft class. I think his breakaway speed and just him being basically untackleable throughout his college career. Like, I think that throwing him in there with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, even Michael Gallup, I mean, that's a crazy receiving room. Dak Prescott's there long term. Might as well give him another target to throw to for a few years.
Yeah, I think it's this interesting thing of like weapons versus it's like weapons versus like other, like essentially defense. I think is like the big fight there for the Cowboys at 10, because like there's still some great defenders on the board, and I think we made some good picks. But to take Waddle at 10, if Waddle falls that far, how do you not take him though?
Exactly. Yeah, that's my thought.
So okay, at 11 we had the first reach. Wesley took Jalen Phillips, the defensive end from Miami, and this was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good edge rushers that are still left on the board. Like Rousseau hasn't gone at all. I mean, and it definitely felt like a reach to me. I don't know.
It was a weird one. I was very confused by it. I thought that he would, either go like defensive back or maybe linebacker, and then he went edge. I don't know. Interesting to say the least. And then at 12, I took Micah Parsons, the linebacker out of Penn State. I think Philly needs a ton of help up the middle. But if they get it, I think they have a chance in the NFC East, because anybody has a chance in the NFC East, apparently. Right. Dustin, you tried to trade up for this pick after I traded up for the next one. He took Devonta Smith at number 13. The Heisman winner falls to 13. That would be something, but I mean, it's not even that unreasonable.
No, I mean, there's a lot of good guys that went before him, so it's definitely possible.
So then 14, in a very Las Vegas Raiders move, I moved up. I traded 17, 48, and 2020 7th round pick to Minnesota to Slick Rick for Trey Lance, quarterback, North Dakota State. 2 capable, or at least like decent quarterbacks on the roster, a defense that is absolutely terrible and full of holes. So I did the Raider thing, and I traded up to get another quarterback, and one that's only started 19 games at the FBS level in college.
Why not? It's John Gruden. Anything is possible, right?
So then you were left with picking Rousseau at 15 for the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the ideal move for me there would have been to get one of those quarterbacks. I wasn't expecting the Raiders move to 14 to pick a quarterback, but that kind of bit me in the butt a little bit. So I ended up going with Rousseau. New England, they had a decent defense last year. They actually were pretty good at generating pressure, but they just weren't able to close out plays and get those sacks that they needed to. And I think adding a little bit of young blood in there with Rousseau will definitely help them in 2021.
I think it absolutely will. As this is happening as we're going, I'm actually up to pick, but we'll get through these first. Arizona Cardinals select J.C. Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. That's not that surprising. Horn is probably the second best cornerback in the draft, and getting him at 16 sounds about right for me. And then Kyle came back in with Christian how do you pronounce Darisaw?
Darisaw, yeah.
Yeah, left tackle from Virginia Tech. Probably the second best or second or third, depending on your opinion, tackle in the draft. So, what do you think of that one? I'll let you take this for a little bit while I decide who the Titans are going to pick here.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good fit. In my ideal world, I think I'd move Cleveland out to left tackle for Minnesota, and maybe if you're going to trade down, I'd maybe go for a guard there, like maybe Wyatt Davis, Elijah Vera Tucker, one of those guys. I think they'd fit in really well at the left guard. I mean, Cleveland did decently at guard last year, but it wasn't anything special, or at least enough to, I guess, validate keeping him there this year. I think he performs a lot better at left tackle if you move him out. But I mean, Darisaw, he'll perform really well at left tackle too. So it's really not any sort of a loss there to get that guy and just bolster the left side of that offensive line.
Yeah, I think a lot of Vikings fans would be thrilled with, any of the kind of three big tackles, or even, Wyatt Davis at the inside. Well, I think a lot of them would be especially happy to get Wyatt Davis with the absolute disaster that the interior offensive line has been for 6 years, 7
years,
somewhere in there.
A while, just put it like that.
Brandon Fusco and John Sullivan were both very good.
Yeah.
Who should I take as the Titans? It looks like I'm going to take Samuel because no one else has, right?
Do it, yeah.
Asante Samuel Jr. That's a bit of a reach, but that's fine. Okay. Then Caleb Farley, cornerback, Virginia Tech. Nothing really surprising there.
Yeah, I mean, I could see him falling a little bit more just because of that back injury. Obviously, he had a pretty great pro day, and I mean, when he's healthy, he's one of the top 3 corners in this draft for sure. So taking him there it's not like a reach or anything. I just would expect teams to be a little bit more cautious with that back issue.
Yeah, and I could definitely see him falling hard. This is such a strange draft this year because I feel like outside of literally number 1, we have no idea how it's going to shake out. In the first about 10 picks are just going to be insane. Mm-hmm. And then after that kind of clarifies what is going to happen, then we'll get a little more understanding of what positions are going to slide a bit more. But I think cornerback could absolutely be the one that does, with how strong this class is with quarterbacks and especially offensive linemen and receivers, both tight ends and Kyle Pitts, because Kyle Pitts is, both receivers and Kyle Pitts, because Kyle Pitts is as good
basically
as
a receiver. Yeah,
he's as good as many of these receivers. 19, we had our second trade. Cleveland traded up 7 spots to get Kwity Paye. I read that wrong every single time. And this was Wesley did this. He traded up right in front of you. Were you thinking of taking Paye at 20 for the Bears?
Not really. It didn't really cross my mind too much. I mean, you still got a decent pass rush there. You got Khalil Mack. And I mean, that offense is absolutely awful. And that was definitely my focus going into that Bears pick, which is, you go ahead.
Horrendously bad, I think, is the way that I've been describing it.
Yeah. So yeah, that ended up, Minnesota fans probably won't like this too much, but I ended up putting Rashad Bateman over in Chicago. I mean, Allen Robinson and Bateman on paper, that's a really good receiving duo, depending on who the quarterback is. But when you think you're getting Russell Wilson and ended up with Andy Dalton, who really knows how that would shake up? So I wouldn't be too hopeful with that one, but I mean, it's the thought that counts for Chicago at this point, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting to think about to think about how Chicago's offseason changed very drastically once they essentially swung and missed on Wilson and swung and missed on any other quarterbacks that were available except Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
I think draft night's going to be interesting for Chicago. I think with that defense, especially with Mac taking a pay cut and a couple other guys taking a pay cut to then not get Wilson, I think a lot of the Chicago Bears' future is teetering on this specific draft and specifically this first round.
Yeah, they could be one of those teams that moves up at the last minute and snags a quarterback, which kind of makes paying Andy Dalton a little redundant, but hey, it's probably worth it in the long run.
Yeah. We have a question here. Why does everyone hate on Dalton? I think it's because he never panned out to be as good as Cincinnati wanted him to be, never won any playoff games. And now he has somewhat of an injury history. He's getting older, and he probably should only be expected to do backup and spot starting. So I think that's why people really don't like him that much as a fit for the Bears' number one quarterback, especially for how much they have just been all over the place with their starters the last few years and the whiff that is Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has less to do with Andy Dalton overall and more to do with the fact that they're going from Mitch Trubisky, who was bad. They could have had Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, and now they're going to just be stuck with Andy Dalton. Like, he's not bad, but he's not anything great either. Like what they need in Chicago.
Right. I think he doesn't. He's not going to lose you a ton of games by being all over the place. He's really consistent, but he's not going to add much value other than, he takes care of the ball and he has a decent arm and he can make the throws when given time. So we'll keep moving forward here in our mock. Rondale Moore, wide receiver, Purdue to the Colts. This would be a very good pick for the Colts, I think. I think behind the first tier of receivers is kind of weird, especially Rashad Bateman, because I don't know exactly how high he's going to be just because of his 2020 tape doesn't look good, and then he only played 5 games. But if you watch his 2019 tape, it's absolutely incredible. If he had declared or been able to go to the draft last year, he probably would have been like a 3rd or 4th round pick somewhere in there, or probably 4th or 5th. And then if he had had a decent even season this year, I think we would have been talking top 15, top 10 even. But yeah, I don't know where he's even going now. This says 17, but he could fall. Yeah. I could see him falling as far as the 3rd round.
It's possible, yeah. Like you said, that 2020 tape doesn't look great. And yeah, with the 5 games, definitely a lot of question marks there.
It is. I love him, obviously, because I'm a Gophers fan. And then the pick that I just made, Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback, to the Tennessee Titans. This one was kind of a no-brainer with what's left on the board, and then what Tennessee kind of needs. I guess I could have gone with Mo Rigg, the safety out of TCU, but I think Samuel was a better fit there. But that's as far as we've gotten since we all aren't paying attention to this super close, apparently. I don't know. Everybody's taking their time, which is okay. We got time.
Yeah.
All right. There was some big trades over the weekend. Dolphins traded back to 12, turn Laramie Tunsil into their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th first round picks for him. So that was a pretty good. Some good moves for a guy who hasn't been
great.
Hasn't been great, yeah. But now they not only moved back, they moved back up into the top 10 by trading with Philadelphia. So we're all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of back in what people have considered the QB market, but I mean, I don't think they're actually going to do something like that, but they haven't taken themselves out of it either. It's definitely still a possibility.
I think they could absolutely go for a quarterback, especially if one falls. I kind of hope they don't. I love Tua as
Yeah.
far as I want him to succeed and get his chance. We do have a question in the chat. How do you feel about the 17 game season? Oh, this was finalized in the last couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
Preseason is a bye week. Preseason week 4 is no longer happening at all, which is okay because it was pretty much not a thing anyway. And then we get 17 games. Yeah, it's going to affect some things, but I don't think it'll be, from our perspective as fans and as media people, it's not going to change much. I can absolutely understand why certain players are upset about it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it just adds to that injury risk, which is already a thing every single season. I mean, I don't love it just because I don't really love having an odd number of games. Like, I mean, you're going to have some guys playing more road games than home games, and you're going to have some guys playing more home games than road games. And I mean, it kind of just makes a little bit more of an advantage for some teams while making a disadvantage for others.
Yeah, I think it's weird to uneven it like that. We saw for years how small things like that can affect how the logistics of the season work out. Like we saw that for years with the Houston Astros being in the National League instead of the American League and being uneven that way. So it's like you say, it's gonna be weird having that one extra game. That you just like, you can go back and forth and say like, oh well, next year you'll get an extra home game, next year you'll get an extra away game. It doesn't really matter because that isn't the same year. Like,
right,
year to year is so different in the NFL that like that one away game as opposed to a home game can mean making the playoffs, having a chance at a championship, and missing it completely.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. As a fan, I'm going to love an extra week of watching meaningful football, but I mean, it kind of throws the entire league out of whack a little bit.
A little bit. Also, apparently 40 minutes ago, the Vikings re-signed Dakota Dozier. I hope for the vet minimum because that.
Yikes.
It's fine. I just don't like Dakota Dozier that much as a player.
Yeah, they're getting a lot of these like low mid-tier guards that they've tried justifying starting in the past, and it's kind of got me worried a little bit.
Me too. Maybe we'll have to see a Wyatt Davis pick, especially with Cleveland being possibly a better fit for left tackle. Okay, so the implications for the trade for Philly, Miami, and San Fran. Oh, this is very interesting. Let's talk about this. San Francisco now has the number 3 pick. That means we have Jacksonville, who is 99% sure, everybody is sure that they're going to take Trevor Lawrence. There's almost no question there. The Jets at 2, they could be moving on from Sam Darnold and going with BYU's Zach Wilson. And then that leaves San Fran at 3, who just moved up to get there. Speculation that pick is supposed to be Wilson. If they don't get Wilson, though, the idea that they could get Fields or even Mac Jones, which would be a crazy reach at this point.
Yeah.
And then for the Falcons, who need to move on from Matt Ryan eventually, could take any one of the 2 quarterbacks that are going to be left at that point between Lance, Fields, and Jones. So there is a very real possibility that we go quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be insane and make 2021 already a historic quarterback draft. Especially because I don't feel that outside of Trevor Lawrence, who's the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, as we are reminded, pretty much everything that we see on him.
Mhm.
Outside of that, I'm not hyped on any of the other guys except maybe Justin Fields after I saw he ran a 4.44 today.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting how much hype these guys have gotten. I mean, I love Trevor Lawrence, like you said. Justin Fields, he seems like a sure thing, but I mean, he's always had like really good receivers at Ohio State too. And I mean, we don't really know yet. But I mean, that's kind of just how it is every year. We don't really know. Mac Jones is my least favorite quarterback of this group by far. I think Trey Lance in the right system could be. He could definitely be a star with his dual threat ability. I mean, his running is ridiculous. In my profile of him, I gave him a bit of a comp to Josh Allen, except he's a little bit more polished at this point than Josh Allen was. His accuracy is a lot better. He didn't throw any interceptions in 2019 for North Dakota State. He completed 67% of his passes. Obviously, it's against FCS competition, so it's a little bit lower quality. But I mentioned this in the profile. I think there's something to be said about going 16-0 against whoever's thrown in front of you, and that's what he did. So.
Yeah, I do agree that like as much as I give him some guff for playing at a lower collegiate level, obviously those players are still very very good, and he's performing at not only that level but like the very very top of that level, with North Dakota State being a perennial championship threat. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know about investing your franchise and especially a top 10, even top 15 pick on a guy who has 19 starts at a level lower than than most players in the NFL. Um, and it's really interesting to me as a Vikings fan watching this happen, um, because our like fan base is still like experiencing like shock waves. I feel like from the Christian Ponder pick at number. So it's very interesting to me to watch people go crazy over this guy who, like, is he good enough? I'm not
Mhm.
saying Trey Lance is Christian Ponder, but I think the comparison could be made, especially if he goes higher than, say, like 15.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's if you're in the top half of the first round and you select a quarterback, I think there's expectation that they are going to work out.
Right. Yeah, I will say Kyle Shanahan. He's the QB whisperer. So if anybody can make it happen, it's him. But yeah, it's definitely a big risk to be taking at this point.
Absolutely, but you don't really. There's no sure things. I feel like, especially at the quarterback position, like Lawrence is the closest thing to a sure thing that we've had in a while, and even that, I'm just like, I don't know. We'll have to
Yeah.
see how he transitions. Interesting. You mentioned Fields playing at Ohio State and having very good receivers, and this is a thing that I wanted to ask you just in general. How much stock do you put in how good a team around a player is?
I mean, if you put a ton of stock in it, I feel like you're just gonna spend the entire day questioning yourself. I mean, if you look at these Alabama guys, they're all playing with first round talent around them. Like, there's just no question about it. Like, that receiver core for the past 3-4 years has been ridiculous. And if you're gonna start questioning those guys, then you just have to look at the guys that have gone before them in the draft. And I mean, they've turned out at least decently well so far. So it's definitely something to think about, but I don't want to spend too much time overthinking it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's more appropriate for guys who have some question marks in their game, or like Mac Jones, who
Mhm.
some people thought he wouldn't even be the answer after Tua got hurt last year. Like there was some questions like going on, like, is he really gonna be good enough to um but I think most first round talents transcend that that whole team thing. So, all right, we'll grab our with the last few minutes here. We'll say our end of March. It is the end of March. That's kind of crazy to think
Yeah.
about already. We are in draft month pretty much. Our end of March thoughts on specifically who the Minnesota Vikings take at 14. Obviously, this assumes like what is available. They aren't getting Trevor
Right.
Lawrence at 14.
Mhm.
So reasonable pick. Who do the Vikings get at 14?
I think I've said this for a while. I think they lean Elijah Vera Tucker there. I think he provides some really good versatility along the offensive line. He can play. He can play a little bit of left tackle, but he's definitely suited to fit into that left guard position. And like I said, I think kicking Ezra Cleveland out to the left tackle will definitely fill out his potential more than the right guard did this past season. So yeah, I think they go Vera Tucker there.
I think that would be a very solid pick. I like the idea of giving Cleveland his more natural position at tackle. I don't think he looked terrible at times at guard, but he also did look terrible sometimes. Maybe I just didn't think he looked as bad because I saw how bad Drew Samia has been.
Yeah, gotten
Um,
used to it.
I'm used to mediocre Vikings guard play, so when anybody touches a defensive lineman, I'm just like, that's pretty good.
Hey, you might have something
A
there.
step in the right direction. But I think realistically, I think Minnesota could go with an edge rusher at 14, especially since they didn't like get anybody.
Mhm.
At least not one of the top end guys. I think we could still see a move or two to pick up another edge rusher.
Right.
But I think Rousseau at there. I don't like Rousseau as much. I think he's going to take some time to like develop. But either Rousseau or Pay at that spot. That is, of course, assuming that they don't do the right thing and get an offensive lineman.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, at 14, I feel like nothing should really be off the table at that point because, like you said, this draft is going to be all over the place. We have no idea what's going to happen. So we could have some crazy top 5 guy fall all the way to 14 if the cards play out that way. So
I'm just saying, if Kyle Pitts is available at 14 and
you take
don't,
him.
what? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a very real possibility that we see just a ton of guys falling. I don't know that we'll actually see. I don't know that we'll actually see a ton of trading now that like that top part of the order has kind of shook up
Mhm.
pre-draft. I don't know if we'll see a lot of moves on draft night or even in these next few weeks because I think everybody's kind of got an idea of what they want, and I think they've already made their moves to get their guys. So
Mhm.
it'll just be interesting, and obviously, who knows? It's the draft.
Right.
We could see, you know, freaking the Jets up there take like Micah Parsons at 2.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't.
Who knows?
Who knows? But yeah, this has been, I think, rough draft is what we're calling this show. I think we're gonna make it a podcast. Um, me and you doing it. I have no idea how often we're gonna do it. I'm down to do it pretty much every day of the week, especially as we get up to draft time.
Yeah.
Maybe drop it down to weekly or something after that. But yeah, we'll be back sometime. So keep an eye
Sometime.
out on social media, Vikings Territory, Purple PTSD on Twitter, the draft team on Twitter. I think we are the _draft_team. I'll have to check on that. It is a brand new website, so I don't know anything. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow or whenever to talk more NFL draft news. We'll probably be done with this mock draft. Ooh,
What
Bullshit
happened?
Larry taken at 23,
Oh wow.
and the first running back, Clemson's Etney. Etney? I don't know how you say it. At 24 by Kyle. So you're up
Dang.
again with the Jacksonville
Okay.
Jaguars. So have fun with that pick. But we'll be back. Yeah.
One of these days.
One of these days we'll be back.